Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I am your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have a couple of very special guests. We have Mel Alexander and Jessica Blevins with the Artistic Options Art Therapy organization, and these are the founders. And these two just spent a couple hours volunteering here at the Gardens of Hope, and I just thought, what a great time. We were able to spend a little time, get to know each other a little bit, and I thought, what a perfect opportunity to jump in and do a clandestine recording. And welcome, you guys. It's such a treat to be able to spend some time, and I just love your program. You know, art as therapy. It's like such a great idea. Why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about this program that you're doing?
So like you shared, I'm Mel, and
I'm Jessica.
Yes, and we collaborated together to create our program, which is called Artistic Options Art Therapy. So Jessica and I both have a background as licensed marriage and family therapists, as well as being registered art therapists in California. So we've both been doing a lot of like clinical work with art therapy. And while that work has been extremely rewarding, we've both kind of been feeling this pull to engage with art, an art practice that's more centered on art being healing. And so taking away kind of the clinical side of things and really focusing on just the aspect of making art, building community, and letting that be a way that, you know, helps with mental health, helps with just like healing in different ways.
So you're looking at it, so from a clinical point of view, as a clinician, you get faced with a client who has a problem or a series of problems, right, and they come to you in search of some help in solving that.
Right.
And so as a clinician, your job is to help them match a solution with their problem and find their way through that explicitly.
Right.
And then you have rules that you have to follow and things you can't do and things you have to do. And it's sort of, I don't know, hamstrings you a little bit in to be able to maybe get where you think you could go.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, well, we're going to make this a clinical program, you just decided, well, let's just make it a program, see what happens.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Just really focusing on, like letting go of a lot of the limitations that like doing the clinical side of work has, especially with like, you know, I think there's this idea of like therapy being, you know, you and a therapist in a room, right, you know, just kind of talking with each other. And that, you know, is definitely helpful and has merit. But there's also so many other ways of like healing and engaging with the world. And so being able to step out of that box just feels good.
So, I mean, what I'm seeing, frankly, and this is important for the audience to hear this. You know, our goal here with this podcast is to find answers, absolutely. But I really want to shine spotlights on things that are not like what everybody expects or thinks. Because amazing thing happens all over the place. They happen when we're paying attention, when we're not. They happen whether you notice them or not. But they do happen. And sometimes we get caught up in our experience and we're like, oh, everything's this or it's not that or it always, you know, and yet none of that's ever true.
Right.
And things are happening all over the place and, you know, the good, bad, everything. And I really think that there are clinicians, there are practitioners, there are people who actually just want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And when I spot that, I'm like, hey, another one over here, guys. So I think that's important, you know, good physicians and good clinicians and practitioners that are, you know, diligent and mindful and really work their skills are really important. Because that's how you get advances to happen and people that are paying attention to the things that need paying attention. But I think there also has to be some, I don't know, just expression sometimes because you sometimes stumble upon answers that you weren't looking for.
Right.
And you just discover, or maybe you just experience something amazing. Like, if you just got one amazing thing that came out of, I don't know, where you weren't necessarily supposed to be, then I'd say it was worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. So, we had a lot of discussions here about what we call integrative therapies, what we call, traditional, natural, all these terms that we use. And, people hear a lot about Western medicine and clinicians and the rigid has to be, the FDA and the, you have to and you can't. And yet, with all the development science has done over the last hundreds of years, thousands of years, people are still sick. They're still depressed. They're still broken. They're still miserable. They're still everything that they ever were.
Right.
So clearly science was not the answer to all those problems. It's been helpful, and it's done we've made lots of progress, but none of the problems went away.
Yeah.
Not one. And so it just makes sense that maybe we should just keep our eyes open, keep our minds open, keep everything open, and just go, I don't know, maybe we'll discover more solutions and help one more person. It seems worth it.
Absolutely. And I think that we don't talk a lot about like prevention and like preventative kind of medicine. And I think there's plenty of room for more programs and like workshops and things related to how do we teach people to take care of themselves and to do the kind of work and find tools so that they don't get to the place where they're like, now I need to be like in therapy, or I need to be on like medication, or need to be in the healthcare system. Like, I think there could be so much more room for preventative work.
100%. I think our communities, in some ways, we've gotten connected to everybody, but we're not really connected to anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have this sort of social media now connection to everybody, the web of connection, but you don't know any of these people.
Right.
And you don't know really what they're thinking about you. And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, let's just sit at a table and look at each other and have a conversation, because I could be typing whatever, and it might be the opposite of what is going on here, and you wouldn't know any different. And so I'm just like, there's something about people being together, people talking, people singing, creating, doing things together that is humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, you go, well, define humanity. Well, it is. It's humans being together, doing stuff, right? And,
absolutely.
We have all this technology that says, well, you don't have to be a good singer and you can still sing. You don't have to be a writer and you can still write. You don't have to be this and you can still do that. Well, I think it's actually come to a place where it says, well, you don't have to have human contact and you can still live.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I don't know if that's right. And I think that we have a whole generation, maybe several generations now, people that are finding themselves more and more isolated.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it.
Right.
Right? Because I can click a button and see hundreds of my friends.
Right.
And talk to them and chat with them and have all this cutesy little stuff, right? I can send them pictures and say long soliloquies, and I can do all this stuff, right? And yet, chances are nobody even saw it or heard it, noticed, and you're
still
still
feel really isolated,
all alone out there. And I think there's something about creating a place, and it's a place. I think there's a spatial element to it, whether it's a real place or a virtual place, but a place where you feel you can come.
Yes.
Maybe it's a place in time. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a whatever, or maybe it's a garden. Doesn't matter, but there's a place where you can go to. And then there has to be like an understanding of expectations where you feel okay. Like you go to some places and you're like, I can't do anything, right? I can't touch. I can't say. I can't just shut up. And don't touch me. Don't look at me, right? And then there's other places where I can do some stuff. And then there's a few places where you can kind of do anything, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And the places where you can do anything are usually ruined because the things everybody did just ruined it.
Right.
So there's not a lot of places where you can go where you can do anything and isn't trashed. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, why? I don't come up with any good answers, do you?
No, like, and that's something that I had read about a while ago, was this idea that, like, especially in like American culture, there are no like secondary spaces to gather or to be together. I think the most that we kind of have in our world is like the bar, right? And that's got
just a dichotomy of social interaction and toxic chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, okay, I guess that's what we got. You know, it used to be the quilting circle and the, you know, different
knitting circles.
It used to be the extended family, just lived in a house.
Yeah.
There was always, and then there was the village and the village square and the people, you know, there was places where people used to socially gather.
Right.
And that was a thing. Hang on. No, it's okay. We don't worry. This is a low thing. Anyway, so you know, throughout all of society, you know, when we were living in caves, well, we all hung out together because it was safe, right? And then we started making little villages, and we hung out together because it was safe. And then as things got safer and safer, we didn't need to do that so much.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, things like personal space became a thing.
Right.
Well, there was never personal space before. There was the forest, and you huddled together, and that was it. You know. Now all of a sudden we've got, oh, well, I've got my space and my personal space, and all this stuff, and it's like we've made that important. Okay, well that's cool, but to what cost?
Right. Yeah, and I think that there's still, even with like that, what's the word? Like idealization of like personal space, taking care of yourself, kind of being on your own. There's still this very deep need to connect in some way. Because, you know, back when it was just like you were all huddled together or you were not safe, to be other, to be outcast meant you weren't going to survive.
And that was the punishment.
Right. So
of
there
all
is
early societies.
Yeah.
You get punished, you're out.
Yeah. So there's this deep need to like connect. And I think especially since like COVID, you know, so many things transition to being online. Like even the work, like the clinical work that I do, it's all telehealth, and it's just continued to be telehealth. And I think that's why like Jessica and I are just so interested in finding these spaces where, you know, we can be together in person and we can create something and provide like that kind of secondary space for people to gather and build community.
I love it. And building and creating, I think, are also sort of an innate need of the human spirit. You know, like you think about the differences between humans and other living things, and there's things that we have like this need. We have to let it out. Where animals are like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to eat. I'm going to procreate, sleep, and I'm good. I don't need to do other stuff. But we're not like that, and we find ourselves in situations where we're given drugs, we're given foods, we're given restrictions that make us maybe not care so much about creating, maybe being numb to it, or you know, the ways that these different compounds and things cause us to disconnect. And maybe we don't feel like we need to. And I think a lot of people go through life and, you know, they hit their buttons and they're creating just fine. I'm creating content, right? I did something. Well, there's a big difference between that and look what I did, right?
Right.
And so when you start talking about art therapy, I think you're starting to get into that look what I did world. So tell me a little bit about, like, you guys have a concept of a thing and you've been able to see it clearly enough to separate it from the clinician realm. And so I want to understand it in a way that says, well, what, can everybody have it? Or is this something that, you know, you have to go and get training for? Or, you know, so the whole idea in simplest terms is you're gaining some value by doing something that is creative. Is that accurate? I mean, to be as broad as I could possibly be.
I think that art making itself is very therapeutic. Like there's plenty of studies and research that show that engaging in art making like promotes like emotional regulation. It's a great form of expression. Like art therapy itself, like the field of it, I think they see it more as like you have a trained professional there who is like making the art with you, and is providing prompts and like space to like engage in it.
So that's where, like when you said you guys had a certification in art therapy, that's what that meant. I was going to get to that because I'm like, all right, so we got this one side of it, then we got another side of it. So so the idea is with this certification is that you got somebody who knows what they're doing, doing a thing that they know, and making it so that the people else that are doing it might get some of that.
Well,
maybe oversimplified.
I mean, it gets complicated.
Okay.
Because I think, like people understand like the benefits of art making, but then when you create like a field and you put like art therapy and you create it like a mental health kind of profession, that's where then we start getting more into like the clinical side.
Oh, okay.
And it becomes more regulated.
Got it.
Yes.
And we have kind of like more rules of like this is what art therapy is.
Got it.
And this is what is not. Like even if you look at like the Association of Art, the American Art Therapy Association, their website has a page that just goes over this is what art therapy is and this is what it's not. Even though we completely understand that somebody making art at home by themselves without a professional there can still find that to be therapeutic.
Right.
You know what's so funny is there's a concept called horticultural therapy.
Yeah, there is.
And there is an American Horticultural Therapy Association.
Oh, is there?
And they have a website that also does this thing.
Yes.
And they have a certification program.
Yeah.
And in order to qualify, you have to meet these criterion.
Right.
And if you're not a certified professional, you have to become one through their service.
Right.
And so I ran into a similar situation, and I was like, all right, I tell you what, I'm not going to do horticultural therapy. I'm going to do therapeutic horticulture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't have to have any certification for anything, and we just do stuff and watch it work.
Yeah.
I think that I was hoping that we were going to find some sort of a little connection to sort of the way we're operating this. And so what happens is when there are regulations and certifications, they have to have boundaries by which they operate, and they have to create a space that says, well, if you're doing this, you have to have that, and if you're not doing that, well, then great, it can look some other way.
Right.
I think that's what we're getting more into is that side of it. So I find it to be very, what's really funny is the American Therapeutic Horticulture Association has this organization, they have members, they have all this stuff. You know what they don't have? Places to operate. And so I have a woman who's, doing some networking and fundraising and stuff, and she's like, I found this guy. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. She got a meeting with me and their director and their whole thing, and it was like, yeah, this would be perfect. I told them about this thing, and oh yeah, we could do it. Never heard back from them. It's this whole sort of like, I don't know, it seems like the professional world, in an effort to be, I don't know, better, kind of, I don't know, excludes itself from a lot of things in ways that it could be actually useful. And so you can't say things, and you can't do things, and you can't talk about things, and you can't take pictures of things, and there's all these things you can't do. And I go, wow, if we could do that, maybe somebody else could learn from it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to do it without exposing the anonymity of somebody. Like, you don't have to take a picture of their whole face.
Right.
You could take a blurry picture of somebody doing a thing and talk about the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just ways to get around these things, and I still just don't. I see, the system getting in its own way. So for that, I'm really grateful that you guys are going at it the way you're doing it. So you're now into your second year of operation?
Yes. Yeah.
And so as you began, you rolled out a couple of programs, and you were focusing on stress and that sort of thing. So how did those work out, or how are they working out?
Yeah, so we kind of initially, when we were creating Artistic Options Art Therapy, it was really kind of sitting down and exploring, well, like, who is our target audience? Like, who, you know, who would we kind of want to be working with? And at the beginning, initially, it was kind of thought of that our target audience would be other clinicians.
Okay.
So with, you know, having experience as clinicians, we both know that the stress factor is very high. The burnout factor is extremely high. So we developed this program to work with burnout using art.
Okay.
And it's a 8-week program. We meet once a week, and we go through different like components of like how to work with burnout.
Okay.
And making art together throughout that process too. So that's how we started, was creating that program. We ran a beta version of it. We had a few people that participated, and we got really good feedback. It went really well. And so that's something that we continue to offer through our website. Right now, just because it's hard to find like locations. It is online, but the goal is to have like a space one day to like facilitate these things. But
I may know of somebody.
And then kind of as we've been growing and developing, we've kind of come to this place now where we really just want to engage in our community and bring, you know, therapeutic art making to different places. So we've been connecting with, like, I think we did the Ontario Art Museum. We did an art walk there and ran a workshop on printmaking. We've done school visits, you know, and so we're just trying to find these spaces where we can come in and say, hey, we have this to offer. Can we please do this?
Nice.
And even with the burnout program that we have, we're even trying to connect with like other like intensive outpatient programs, partial hospitalization programs, to come in and say, hey, do your clinicians need this? Like, can we offer this to your employees to kind of help with that burnout factor? So that's kind of where we're at right now.
I suspect, and I mean, again, this is just the first program that you've developed. I suspect you probably will roll out all kinds of programs as they reveal themselves, in sort of like, it's kind of like our therapeutic horticulture. I'm always learning other things that it's good for, because people come here for one thing, and then they come back and say, oh, well, while we were at it, this other good thing happened. And it's like you keep finding these unintended benefits that keep happening. And so I can definitely see a play for more and more of this. But I think that as I'm finding a similar situation where when we opened up these gardens, I thought, oh, it'll be a place where the clinicians can come and they can practice their art, and they can help themselves and help others. And really, I found the same sort of situation. It's hard to connect with the clinicians because they're busy in their own world.
It's true.
And you know, as clinicians, that people are always pinging you, trying to sell you something or an idea or something. You're busy fending them off while you're trying to protect your own space and build your own business at the same time. It's not easy to balance all these things. And I think that, you know, clinicians, we live in a world that's very network oriented. People know the people they know because of the people they know, and the, you know, references and all that, because we're so bombed out with marketing and everybody's telling you, and you're just, you know, somebody, you just want somebody friendly to tell you a thing. I think it just makes it take a little longer to get the word out. But, you know, in working with, you know, a mental health group myself, they had their own art therapy department or program of some sort that they're bringing over to the gardens. And so there's a recognition of art therapy and creative expression as being therapeutic tools. And in the hands of somebody skilled to use them, you guys are in a beautiful spot. I think really it's just going to come down to, you know, taking the time and developing these things, and you know, the word of mouth happens. You know, those people that took your program and had benefit, they've already told somebody. And you know, it just takes time. You only see what you see. You know, it's like gardening. People come to me all the time. They're like, I don't know, my plant's not growing. I'm like, don't look at it for a couple of days. It'll be fine. And then you come back, you're like, oh my God, it's doing so good. I'm like, So I think a lot of these things have to do with, you know, expectations and messaging and all that. And that's, again, what this is all about, you know, talking about a thing that's important, putting it out there in a place where somebody can find it. today you guys got to taste a little bit of my therapy.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear about that experience.
Yeah, it was so nice just being out here today, getting to get my hands dirty and I have dirt under my nails, which feels nice. And
that's the thing. I want to get into this because I know, like, I'm used to it. I've always got dirt under my nails, and every once in a while my nails don't have dirt under them. But I notice, like, when I work with different groups, some of the groups I work with every kind of group. I have, young special needs kids. I have older, every type of disability that I work with. I have veterans I work with all kinds of disabilities and traumas. I work with the mental health group. I'm working with, toddlers to geriatric patients. And you think to yourself, wow, well, what do you have in common for all of them? And, one of the things that I've noticed is just what you guys said, that people notice the tactile feeling of dirt, not just on their hands, but under their fingers and and it's like a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling, but kind of not.
Yeah.
It kind of like scratches an itch, a little itch that you didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like these sensations that, unless you go and do stuff that you're not used to doing, you find yourself like, oh. and then something that seems to be like a negative, like I got dirt under my nails, that seems to be toxic, the way you even say it, like it's just a thing, and you're like, no, and so what?
Yeah.
And then there becomes this thing of maybe there's a ritual of grooming yourself or of even just being aware of a thing, noticing that pressure under your nail bed that you didn't notice before, and then you're going to get a feeling of when it's gone, it's going to feel really nice too, and then the juxtaposition of those feelings, and you can translate that into everything. And I think that's a really cool thing. So in doing a thing that you don't normally do, I think that's where there's that magic stuff, like they say, like, get yourself out of your comfort zone, right? It's sort of that same place. You do a thing you haven't done, be a place you haven't been, see a person you haven't seen, or whatever. There's discovery. There's the unknown, uncertainty, all of these places where we're a little like, I don't know, but what do you get out of it? You go through it anyways. You have that moment of, okay, I'm going to do it. That's a powerful move right there.
It is.
That's the place where everything happens.
Absolutely. And I feel like it forces you to get to a place where you have to be very present and very mindful because you are out of your element and you're not just like in your automatic, like, day-to-day.
Nothing automatic in that world,
You're like, I never do this.
Right.
And now I'm like very present because I'm like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? And it feels good to be just very present and mindful.
Yeah.
And there was something really interesting that came up for me too. So we were planting like microgreens, in different spots, and something like it touches on this idea of like confidence in your choices too. Because it was like, okay, is this the right spot? Am I doing this right? But it's like,
we talked about it a little bit. And we laid out that, I've learned that, like, if you don't give anybody direction, they just do stuff. And then they have no idea what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then you explain to them why they did it all wrong and they screwed everything up. They're like, oh, sorry. And there's no connection to it. I go at it the other way around. I'm like, okay, well, you're totally responsible for everything you do, but you'll be okay. And that way it's like, well, you get that, oh, I have a burden of responsibility. I should be mindful. I should pay attention. But I'm not going to get hurt. So it gives you a little bit of a freedom that says, okay, no matter what. And he told me it would be okay. That's I think a good move. So
and art therapy is the same thing. You do not have to be an artist to get the benefits from art therapy. We may give a bit of like a guided kind of like optional directive, but you are completely open to create whatever comes to you in that moment, and that's the beauty of it. You can't get it wrong.
100%. And I think that's this kind of work, whether it's gardening or it's all art, that the creative processes is the essence of art. And with all these things we're doing, whether it's building a rock wall or digging a hole or planting a plant or pruning or whatever it is. There's maybe a perfect way to do it. Probably not. There's probably a lot of ways to do it pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's some ways to do it not so good.
Yeah.
And there's probably a way or two to totally ruin it. Okay? But the odds are pretty good that you're going to land in the better zone than the far reaches of perfection or totally ruined it.
Yeah.
And I think to get yourself in a place where you can feel comfortable enough that says, I can reach outside, and even if it stings a little bit, I'll be okay.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a powerful place, and I think that it creates an environment where people like can let go of those things that are holding them back. You know, because we have all these mechanisms that say, you know, filters and don't, and pay attention and be careful and don't and don't and don't, and not a whole lot. And the people that don't have those filters are usually problems, you know, or find themselves in problems because they just keep doing the things that they're not supposed to do. And I think we get to take a little bit from one and be mindful of the other and create this place where all these good things can happen. And if it doesn't go right, it's not a big deal.
And I think the gardens, like just the environment, the space, kind of gives you that. It gives you just that little idea of like, I can be a little more free here versus like if we were running like an art workshop, like in a fluorescent lighted like room indoors. It feels more kind of formal and less like I can breathe. I have space here.
And that's something I noticed here too, is there was this, you know, these parts of me that were like, we get to play.
Yes. Exactly.
We get
to play.
I very much want this place to be a playground. I always tell people, I go, I know I look like an old guy, but I'm a 7-year-old kid. I guarantee you, running around going, look at me, you know, climbing up the tree and leaping and doing all that stuff. I built this place for a 7-year-old kid, you know, and I think that there's something about that I just refuse to let go of. I think that's the place where the wonder and the joy lives, you know? And I was always that wondrous, joyful kid that was like, oh, look what's under there. Oh, look what's there. And then you get old and you're like, oh, you have to do this and you can't do this. And oh, you better and you better. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, where's my joy? You know? And so you come to a place like this, well, go ahead. You're all right. And that's why I like to kind of do activities with volunteers where we do things together and structured, and I try to like give a little direction and say, well, you know, but then I always like to give an activity where everybody involved just gets to be out there and you know, I told you, I gotta restrain myself from telling you all about it. So I'll go off and do something else for a little while too. But I think that's where really the most good generally comes from. Is that period of time where you get to be with the garden. And you know, I really feel like we had originally talked about doing a garden workshop here, and we got close. We didn't do marketing well enough. We didn't get enough people to sign up for it. So that turned into a volunteer day, which worked out beautiful. And I believe that us talking about the value of both of these programs and ways to weave them together, I think we've come up with some new ideas and possibly having some just more general art workshops and giving people a place to come and do some art. There's this lovely idea that an art therapist named Pat Allen created, which is an open studio practice, which is just where you come in, you set an intention, and you just make art, and then you dialogue with that art, and it's a way to gather information and explore like just what answers might be there in the art. And so we would love to just be able to come into the garden and invite others to come here and just be with nature and make art. I love it.
You know, and something just as simple as that can be so special and can just help. I think there's just something so healing about being in nature and then being able to express what you need to express with the art.
100%. Well, what I can see coming out of this is creating a program together that we can make available up on the Gardens of Hope website where people could reach to you directly through that and sign up, and you guys can organize it and we can make it happen.
That would be
definitely.
awesome.
I mean, to me, I think that seems like an easy
Yeah.
move forward. And I happen to be in the middle of developing a new website, and I've got a guy I'm talking to every day working on it. So it seems like maybe this is a good move forward, and it saves a space for other types of activities and events to be here. But this is like a nice, easy, open-ended thing where somebody comes and wants to do some art, and you happen to be here hanging out, and maybe I don't know. I think anything can happen. Well, this is fantastic. I'm really grateful that we were able to bring this together. It's so funny because like this whole experience has come out of a couple of false starts. Like originally we were going to try to do a workshop at the Holistic Health Symposium, and we determined the last second that wasn't going to work out, and we're like, well, let's do another thing. And then we end up hanging out, having a good time, and maybe doing another thing. So I really think that's fantastic. So if anybody who's listening to this and they're interested in either working with programs that you have available right now, or even just talking to you about, maybe creating a program or getting involved with this new idea of a space in the garden to do art, how would somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can get a hold of us through our website, which is artisticoptionsarttherapy.com. We also have an Instagram under the same name, Artistic Options Art Therapy, and that's a great way to get in contact with us would be through that Instagram page, or on our website there's a contact tab where you can send us a message as well.
Fantastic. And stay tuned to the Gardens of Hope website, where soon there will be a program available where somebody can sign up directly. Well, thank you guys. It's been an absolute treat, and I look forward to spending more time with you soon.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right, well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.